Why Islam allows polygamy. Polygamy is permitted in Islam. Muslim men can marry up to 4 wives.
Marry women of your choice, 2 or 3 or 4.
Quran 4:3. But polygamy is not encouraged or required. Most Muslims view it as a solution in a time of crisis. The Quran also requires treating all wives equally.
You will never be able to treat your wives equally, even if you are keen to do so.
Quran 4:129. This verse implies that polygamy is not ideal, but let's look at how it started. In 7th century Arabia, polygamy was a widespread social practice. Islam regulated and capped an existing practice. After the Battle of Uhud, many Muslim men were killed in war. Their widows and orphans needed protection. Polygamy let women remarry instead of leaving them poor. Orphans were sheltered. Polygamy prevented the exploitation of women. At that time, having children was vital for survival. Children, especially sons, carried on the family name. Having children was critical for social status and inheritance. Not having offspring was viewed as a misfortune. Polygamy let men have children if their first wife was infertile. This allowed them to continue their lineage. Infertile women faced shame and divorce. Polygamy prevented this. Men didn't leave their barren wives. They kept providing and caring for them. Elite men sometimes flaunted their virility by taking multiple wives, but most men only took a second wife for practical purposes. Before Islam, men had unlimited sexual access to female slaves. The 4-wife limit aimed to curb this. Concubines had more protection as wives versus just slaves. This was progress for women's rights at the time. Wives had rights that slaves did not. They could receive inheritances and own property. They could not be separated from their children. Wives also had the right to free movement. Slaves required permission from the master. Polygamy was essentially a solution in a time of crisis. It's important to remember that Islam did not invent it. The Bible says Lamech, Adam's grandson, had 2 wives. So polygamy has existed since early history. Many biblical figures had multiple wives or concubines. Abraham had Sarah and Hajar. Jacob had 4 wives and concubines. Leah and Rachel were his cousins. Bilhah and Zilpah were slave girls, gifted to him by his wives. Jacob had 12 sons by these 4 women. The sons became the ancestors of the 12 tribes of Israel. Another example is that of Prophet Muhammad himself. He married his first wife Khadijah when he was 25. Khadijah was both a divorcee and a widow. In pre-Islamic Arabia, women had little influence. Their opinions were not valued, but Muhammad regularly consulted Khadijah's wisdom. He also remained faithful to her throughout their 25-year marriage. After her death, he took on more wives. One was Sauda bint Samah. She was an elderly widow. She needed protection after immigrating from Mecca to Medina. Muhammad's later marriages also provided for widows and orphans.